If you're running a .308, you already know the rifle can only shoot as good as what's sitting on top of it. A blurry sight picture, a scope that can't hold zero under recoil, or turrets that wander after a few hundred rounds will ruin a hunt faster than anything else in your kit. I went through 5 of the most popular .308 compatible rifle scopes on the market right now and broke down exactly what real owners are saying after actually shooting these on their rifles. Kicking off our list at number 5 is the Vortex Sonora, a 412 by 44 second focal plane scope with a dead-hold BDC MOA reticle. This is the scope with the fewest reviews on our list today, sitting at 898 ratings and a 4.7-star average, with more than 100 buyers picking one up in just the past month. Don't let the low review count fool you, though. This is a genuinely well-liked scope among hunters who've put rounds through it. One buyer described doing extensive research and comparison shopping before settling on the Sonora, eventually finding out from the manufacturer that it's essentially the same internal build as a pricier Vortex model with a different name slapped on for a different regional market. That discovery was enough to convince him to buy a 5th one for his collection. Another hunter mounted the Sonora on his deer rifle and used it for a full year across both range sessions and actual hunts, praising how clear it stayed in low light and how much lighter it felt compared to his other scopes when trekking deep into the brush. That same scope survived a genuine field accident. It took a hard fall off a four-wheeler when a strap broke, leaving a visible dent, and it still shot sub-MOA afterward. When he reached out to Vortex about the cosmetic damage, they replaced the scope free of charge and threw in a hat for good measure. Other buyers backed up the clarity claims, with one noting the view stayed sharp at every magnification level, and another saying it focused well even with poor eyesight. A longtime Nikon shooter who eventually switched brands said the Sonora actually looked clearer to him than Vortex's own Crossfire 2 line, and it held zero reliably on his .270. The one knock some buyers mentioned was an occasional slight blur at the outer edges of the field of view, though most still rated the scope highly overall. For a scope built around simplicity, durability, and genuine field-tested toughness, the Sonora earns its spot on this list. But the next scope up brings something the Sonora doesn't have, a proven track record on serious long-range precision rifles, including verified use out to 1,000 yards. Stick around. Number 4 is a serious step up in capability. The Vortex Venom, a 525 by 56 first focal plane scope built on a 34mm tube with the EBR-7C reticle. This scope sits at 955 reviews with a 4.8-star average, and more than 100 buyers grabbed one in the last month. What separates the Venom from the Sonora immediately is the sheer amount of elevation and windage travel, 85 MOA of max adjustment, which opens the door to genuinely long-range shooting that the Sonora simply isn't built for. One competitive shooter running NRL 22 matches praised the side parallax adjustment for keeping his target crisp at extended distances, and said the scope's steep elevation travel let him dial zeros anywhere from 35 to 200 yards in 5-yard increments and return to each one consistently. He also noted the scope has held zero across a huge range of calibers he's mounted it on, from rimfire all the way up to a .338 Win Mag. Another buyer who mounted the Venom on 4 different rifles said the glass stayed clear and distortion-free even out at 25x magnification, which is exactly the kind of edge-to-edge sharpness that matters once you're stretching a .308 out past 600 yards. A third reviewer specifically called out the RevStop Zero system for making it fast and reliable to return to a known zero after dialing for different distances, and appreciated the included throw lever for quick magnification changes during timed shooting. He also noted that despite the Venom's added weight, that heft actually helps it feel more solid and stable when absorbing heavier recoil. Several other owners echoed the same theme: tactile, confidence-inspiring turret clicks, and glass that punches above its price point compared to other long-range optics they'd tried. The only real downside mentioned across multiple reviews was the lack of an illuminated reticle, something buyers said they'd need a different model to get. Compared to the Sonora, the Venom clearly wins on raw long-range capability, elevation travel, and glass performance at high magnification, exactly what a .308 shooter stretching distance needs. But the next scope on this list has already outpaced the Venom in total review volume, and it's earned that trust specifically from hunters running AR platform 308s in the field. Let's get into it. At number 3, we have the Vortex Crossfire 2 and its 4 to 112 by 44 configuration, running the dead-hold BDC reticle. This scope has built up 4,419 reviews with a 4.7-star average, and more than 300 buyers picked one up in the past month. Already a noticeably larger buying crowd than either scope we've covered so far. One buyer's story sums up why this scope keeps winning people over. He'd already tried 2 budget alternatives, returned both, and only then landed on the Crossfire 2, immediately noticing better glass clarity, more robust components, and packaging that reflected actual quality control, all backed by Vortex's lifetime warranty. Another owner directly compared it to a similarly priced Nikon scope and said the Crossfire 2 wasn't close in quality. The glass was noticeably better and it held zero far more consistently. A target shooter running a .22 LR through this scope at 50 to 100 yards praised the generous eye box and called the sight picture bright and crystal clear. The most detailed field account came from a hunter who mounted this scope on a Remington chambered in .243 for deer and hog hunting. He bore sighted at 25 yards, then walked the zero out to 100 yards, and had 3 different shooters, 2 right-handed, 1 left-handed, put rounds inside a tight 3-inch group-off sandbags. He then practiced on a deer-shaped target from a sitting position using a shooting stick, landing solid hard shots within a couple of inches of each other after an initial low miss. About a week later, his son used the same setup to take a buck at 75 yards with a clean, well-placed vital shot, the scope holding true through the entire process. His only complaint was thin exterior coating that scratched more easily than expected after a few hours in the field. Other reviewers described switching entirely to Vortex after this scope, with one buyer ordering 3 at once and another calling it his second Vortex purchase in a row, impressed each time by the optical clarity and the security of the lifetime warranty. Compared to the Venom, the Crossfire 2 obviously isn't built for extreme long range, but it wins where it counts for most .308 hunters. Proven zero retention under real hunting conditions, verified game harvests, and a bigger, more consistent base of satisfied owners. The next scope up nearly doubles this review count and brings a reputation for surviving, punishing recoil that few scopes at any price can match. You'll want to hear this one. Number 2 is the Vortex Copperhead, a 4-12 by 44 second focal plane scope with the Deadhold BDC Moe reticle. This scope carries 1,585 reviews and a 4.7-star rating, with over 100 buyers picking it up in the last month, and it currently sits at its lowest price point in 30 days, a sign of just how in demand this scope has become. What pushes the Copperhead ahead of the Crossfire 2 is a combination of tougher build reputation and an even wider range of verified real-world use cases. One buyer picked this up specifically for his father as an upgrade from a scope that dated back decades, and reported that his dad loved the clarity and the hand-adjustable cap turrets compared to the older tools-required scopes he was used to. Another owner called it his second Vortex scope and said it held zero even under what he described as brutal recoil, while still gathering enough light to be usable in low-light hunting conditions. The most detailed account came from a shooter who mounted the Copperhead on a DPMS pattern, semi-automatic 1308. He praised the scope's ability to be sighted in accurately and noted the reticle's hash marks were genuinely useful for windage and holdover corrections on the fly. His honest critique was that the turret clicks felt a little imprecise compared to higher-end optics, and that the scope tended to rotate slightly within its rings under the repeated slamming recoil of a semi-auto action, though he clarified this wasn't the scope's fault so much as a mismatch with that specific rifle platform, and he's kept the scope mounted on a bolt gun for hunting instead, where it performs great. Other buyers reinforced the durability angle, with one saying he now owns 3 of these scopes and mounted the latest on a .22 platform after being impressed by the first one he bought from a retail store. Another buyer purchased it as a gift for her husband and called it a great investment right out of the gate. Compared to the Crossfire 2, the Copperhead pulls ahead with a noticeably larger and more consistent base of satisfied owners, plus verified toughness under heavy recoiling cartridges, a critical factor for anyone running a .308 that kicks harder than lighter calibers. But our number 1 scope isn't just slightly ahead in review count. It's the most reviewed scope on this entire list by a wide margin, and the reasons why are worth waiting for. Taking the top spot is the original Vortex Crossfire 2 in its 3.9-440 configuration, running the Deadhold BDC reticle. This scope has amassed 1,862 reviews, the highest of anything on our list, with a 4.8-star average and more than 400 buyers purchasing one in just the past month alone. More monthly buyers than every other scope on this list combined at that pace. That kind of volume, combined with the highest star rating of the group, is what earns this scope the number 1 position. The hunting stories behind this scope are some of the most detailed on the entire list. One buyer picked this as his first serious riflescope after years of using sub-$50 options, mounting it on an AR platform chambered in 2300 blackout. He described the sight picture as brilliantly clear with crisp colors, and was especially impressed with the turret feel, describing positive, confident clicks with none of the mushy adjustment or wandering zero that plagued his cheaper scopes. He was able to get his rifle zeroed in just 4 shots. Another hunter specifically praised how well this scope performs at extended hunting ranges, calling it perfect for shots out around 400 yards thanks to the Deadhold reticle giving him confidence in his holdover without needing to dial anything. A third reviewer who has owned several scopes over the years called this one impressively feature-rich while still remaining simple enough for an average hunter to operate confidently, highlighting the excellent low-light performance, the complete absence of internal fogging when moving from a warm house into freezing temperatures, and reticle hash marks precise enough to lead a moving target. Even buyers who ran into hiccups came away satisfied. One reported receiving a used unit with a bent component and missing accessories, but Vortex's replacement arrived properly packaged with everything included and performed exactly as expected. Another simply noted fast delivery and a scope that matched the listing exact. There's also an honest caveat worth mentioning. One buyer found the fixed 100-yard parallax setting didn't suit his use case on a break barrel air rifle shot at much closer ranges. A good reminder that this scope is purpose-built for centerfire rifles like the 2308, not air guns. Compared to every scope on this list, the Crossfire 2 3-9540 wins on the numbers that matter most. The largest, most consistent base of real owners, the highest star rating, and the most monthly buyers by a wide margin. Combined with proven zero retention, genuine low light clarity, and a no questions asked lifetime warranty. It's the scope with the most evidence behind it, and that's exactly why it takes the top spot on this list.